Hi, I'm TheHande and this is Kao the Kangaroo, aka Polish Croc. Yes, this is a 3D platformer from the year 2000, and the first time I booted this baby up this summer, I was immediately reminded of one of my favorite platformers, Croc the Legend of the Gobos. It was made by the Polish studio TheHande, and in it you control a kangaroo named Kao, who is captured, finds a pair of boxing gloves, and then has a grand old adventure to get revenge on the hunter who captured him. Yeah, this intro is just stunningly bad and magical at the same time. Like, the whole game really has a budget platformer look. Okay, so I actually remember the year 2000, and even the big games back then did have a low poly count, so that's not a strike against the game visually. It's really the textures. They looked extra messy, like this game was some kind of a botched port of a Nintendo 64 game. But you know, the minute I started the game and realized how it is very much like Croc, I just instantly loved it. And every subsequent level, I just loved it even more because the theming of each level just goes off the rails. Like, you have this rancid rainy day level that then just abruptly turns into the ice slide from Super Mario 64. I just genuinely love this, and there is indeed a lot of variety. You have your standard jungle, lava caves, ice levels, but then also a cruise ship, a desert, and you even go to space and get a cute little space helmet. You gotta hand it to TheHande, they really had a lot of ambition with this one. Okay, so the first kind of weird thing about the controls, like I said, this game reminds me of Croc a lot. I mean, he even does the tail whip, and I'm almost sure this is even the same sound effect as Croc, or at least it's very close. But you do also have other attacks. You obviously have the boxing gloves, and while I personally do like using the tail whip, the gloves do activate a bit faster. So there are some enemies that you can defeat more easily using these, as well as certain obstacles you can get rid of much more easily. There is no ground pound, sadly. Instead, you get this projectile glove, which depletes after one hit and is basically completely useless. One thing that isn't terribly obvious right from the get-go, and until you have to run away from something, is that you actually move forward a lot faster by jumping than running. I mean, you are a kangaroo, so I guess I should have figured that. But it didn't even occur to me until I had to do platforming for the first time, and I was genuinely worried that I wasn't going to make it because Kao walks so slowly. But you know what else is weird about Kao? You know, except for his name, which sounds like a completely different animal. Just like in Croc, this game has tank controls, and I'm personally fine with it. I like Croc's controls too, and for the most part, it's not too distracting. Except in a few places. The camera is always behind you, and it's never really an issue until you get to the maze levels. Yeah, these suck. The walls are too close and the camera gets caught on them. And there's only one recenter button, which doesn't always work. Oh dear, that hasn't aged well. I've said already multiple times how this game looks and feels like Croc. I feel like I've said Croc too many times in this video already. Croc, 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 croc. But this game luckily does have a few unique elements. Now, the Crocodile game that I've mentioned multiple times divided its levels into smaller sub-areas, probably due to the PlayStation's memory limitations, I don't know. But in Kao, the levels are long continuous areas, and have no checkpoints. Except if you pick one up, and you also get one at the start of every level. Yeah, in Kao you can place a checkpoint by pressing enter basically wherever you like in the level, preferably after a really hard segment. But it's kind of weird because you already have to kind of know what the hard part is so you don't waste it by accident. It is a neat feature, but why couldn't you just have a save game? Yeah, you can save between levels, but you know, this is a PC game. I could have understood this feature if this game had come out on the original PlayStation or Nintendo 64, but no, this was literally only for PC. Why not just a regular save game? And this whole knowing the level inside out business is extra weird when I now have to stop to talk about the life system. And I gotta be honest, this is probably the game's biggest flaw. The game has a map screen and you can replay levels to your heart's content. But if you find yourself at a point in the game where you're out of lives and you think you can just go back and stock up more, nope. Every coin in this game can only be collected once. So if you go back to an older level, there are no coins for you to collect. Now, you do get extra lives every 50 coins, so if you die like a couple of times per level, you can actually make up the difference pretty easily. But if you start dying a lot, then you might as well just reload an earlier save, and you should keep the saves separate. This is really frustrating to figure out for the first time. Like in Crash Bandicoot and something like Donkey Kong Country, you could just replay an earlier, easier level to stock up on lives. But here, they are extremely finite because the coins are literally finite. But don't worry, this game plagiarizes other 3D platformers too. There's the aforementioned Mario 64 slide levels, and then there is a healthy influence of Crash Bandicoot in the mix, which does highlight another weird thing about the controls. There are both Crash-style side-scroller and chase levels in this, and guess what? They also use tank controls. For the chase parts, it's not really that bad, especially because the chase sequences never take up the whole level and the obstacles are fairly predictable. But come on, you couldn't just invert the controls just for this part. It's the side-scroller levels that are needlessly challenging because of the tank controls, since you can accidentally move depth-wise without meaning to, plus you sometimes have to jump diagonally, which feels incredibly sadistic. I mean, yeah, the jumps are telegraphed, but the ship's side-scroller level was by far my least favorite one of these. The rest were pretty doable, though I still sometimes kill myself by falling off the platforms when they don't touch the back wall. And don't worry, if you thought this game only plagiarized 3D platformers, nope! It takes a few notes from other games of the period, like Pilot's Wing 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and 1080 Snowboarding, with vehicle levels. And these might seem daunting, but I found very quickly that the easiest way to get through these is to actually just go slow. You only need to speed up for the jumps that you absolutely have to make. But this does highlight another slight issue, which is the weirdly eclectic difficulty. Sometimes a level will keep kicking your ass, forcing you to constantly reload, and then the next two levels are a goddamn cakewalk. Like, this game was clearly meant for kids, but they put all these sadistic traps everywhere. Some of the enemies have really weird hitboxes. The Eskimos and the penguins are my least favorites, since you can only hit them while jumping without taking a hit yourself. The bosses are also a total joke. Now, the bosses in the Crocodile game were often annoying since you couldn't always easily tell where the hitboxes were. You have some of the same problems here, but every single boss has a dumb gimmick, which once you figure out what it is, they basically pose no challenge at all. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the first boss is doing the Dr. Livesey walk from the Soviet Treasure Island meme. And yet, despite all the shortcomings, this game is just infectious. The music is probably my single favorite thing about it. The soundtrack is very varied, taking influences from all the games they plagiarized, and even a few that they didn't, like some of the space level themes sound like a Mega Drive game. Just like in Jazz Jackrabbit, the obvious plagiarism rather adds than detracts from the charm of this game. And man, it must have been really popular, since they made 2 sequels and a reboot. So yeah, Kao might not be a shiny, perfectly engineered game. It's janky, unbalanced, and rips off at least a half dozen other games, but I get a childlike wonderment from playing it, and it puts me in a good mood. For every ball-bustingly awful level, there is luckily at least 3 good or at least decent levels to balance it out. So if you like Croc and wanna experience its bargain bin foreign cousin, I'd recommend this. I'm TheHande Mäkinen, see you on the next one.